give me the power. Oh my goodness. That's well, that's one way to go to credits. Admittedly, that was not what I was expecting. But I rock with it, you know. I rock with it. Alrighty. Uh, Wargroove 1 has been conquered. Woot woot. Uh, yeah. Let's see. I didn't write down my thoughts for this game, so we're gonna do this one off the dome as well. My overall thoughts for this game are I there are two sides to this game for me. There's the story, and basically anytime any piece of dialogue comes up, I didn't enjoy it all. I thought the story was fine, but man, was it just invoked too much childishness and just like those aspects of story that I don't really gravitate to, power, friendship, you know, letting the enemy get away and all this other stuff. So I didn't really rock with basically any of the dialogue, which effectively crafted the story and my feelings towards it. Um, then there's the combat aspect of it, which I actually enjoyed. I thought it had that what's like it had like this customizability to it where you can kind of dig your own grave, but maybe you can also dig yourself out of that grave as well. With being able to build units and stuff. It was actually also kind of cool that there were missions where building wasn't the focus, and instead you just have these set number of units, and that's what you have to use to beat the objective. And so that added a nice bit of variety to things. I will say that, like overall, I think the story and the dialogue of this game really did kind of taint a lot of the enjoyment that I probably could have had. Um, after I think day one, I was like, I want to skip every line of dialogue, and I just want to, just do the missions. And yeah, it 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 was a little bit of a struggle not to do that, but yeah, it was it, it was fine. You know, the game was fine, but I think the story and the dialogue just moves it on to like the bottom half of fine for me. Um, and that's kind of where I'm at. Uh, you feel me? Game would have been way better with no dialogue at all. They thought they were SNL writers or something. I don't think it's like that. That I do feel that games that have a story, like that gives you a leg up. Just going from mission to mission, it's gonna make the game feel weird that there's nothing going on, and like there's no narrative, and you're just fighting, like battles to battles. When there's a story involved, it it ties things together, and sometimes that story and the dialogue don't exactly make the game better, but it makes it more of a complete package, I guess, if that makes sense. Like there are some games out there that just they put in less effort into the story, and like there is some amount of suffering that the game incurs because of the degree of story that's it's put into it. Um, Honestly, if this was a gritty, war battle tactics game and its story reflected that, I'd probably have a completely different opinion on it. But mostly this, like, I really don't want to say childish, but I feel like that's probably one of the better descriptors. Um, it feels like it's catering to a much younger audience, and I want something a little bit more grown up than that, I guess, or a lot more grown up than that. But it is what it is. When it comes to gameplay mechanics and design, um, one of the things that I struggle with tactics games like this is that for the most part, when it comes to tactics games, rarely are you put in a situation where it's like, okay, the enemy and you are on an equal playing field, and now it's just you need to outplay the enemy. I don't remember every single mission, but I feel like every mission was okay. You're at a disadvantage, or maybe even a major disadvantage, and you need to crawl out of this hole very, very slowly. And ultimately, that's a fine way to approach missions, but I would really enjoy um, a variety of missions. Like to have a mission where I actually have the advantage and I get to crush the enemy. Having one or two of those would be really nice. Um, something like that would really go a long way for me in being like, yeah, I get to stand on top of the mountain this time, because there's all those tactics games where the enemy's always on top of the mountain with all those archers, and you have to slowly hop your way up the mountain while getting arrows in your face. And, it, it just goes a long way when you can reverse that, and the enemy has to crawl up the mountain and you get to pelt them with arrows from the top. Another thing, this might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but every like country slash faction had their own sprite work for it, and I really like the look of the sprites, but I think the sprites made things more confusing for me as to what enemies are and like what type of enemies they are. Um, and there are certain, like there are identifiers to spot them. Like the lancers. Like they're always gonna have a lance, and they got the spear guys, and the spear guys always got the spears. Um, but as crazy as it sounds, I really wanted more consistency in expectations of, oh, I'm looking at this unit, I immediately recognize, oh, that's an archer, or oh, that's a dragon, or oh, that's a sea turtle, which, those are all pretty recognizable. Uh, but yeah, this this is funny. All right, well, The game crashed at the end of the credits. What can you do? I would mute the music anyways. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like the crazy thing for me is, like I was recognizing things, but I don't know. I felt a way, I guess, about having to put more effort into recognizing units instead of just everything being the same. Um, Also, I don't know if there were any like any areas in the game where I could figure more stuff out, but being able to cycle my units of like units that haven't been moved yet, if there was a button for that, I would have really liked to know what it was because that's fairly useful. Um, Also, I had the check mark or the option checked to end my turn like automatically when I can't do anything. But that didn't work if all of my units were moved, but I still had a building that I didn't build out of. And there were instances where I've had like zero money and I can't build anything, but the turn doesn't automatically end. So, um, little things like that stood out to me as well. Um, Also, the enemy AI in this game is it's pretty darn intelligent. The way that it would position units so that certain units that you have couldn't like weave in and out to accomplish the things that you wanted to do, or they would perfectly position them so that uh, they would cover like just the right amount of space so that you would get punished if you were to move into it. Like the AI was super good about that, and it made missions much more difficult for me because I had to actually use way more brain power to go through them instead of just brute forcing my way in. But it is what it is. It was NBC, CBS Saturday morning cartoon, and you were looking for more Fox Kids Saturday morning cartoons. That's a pretty good identifier there. There were some pretty good cartoons back in the day. Telling you. Um, for music, I thought the music was fine. There were some tracks that I gravitated to a lot more than others. So I'll probably give this OST a listen, put it on the list, and see if I can make some beats out of it. See what we can do. But yeah, I think that's pretty much my my thoughts. My overall thoughts. I think the game is okay. Downward slope of okay, primarily just because I didn't like the story and I felt like the dialogue just didn't. Let me sidestep. The story in of itself, like the outline of the story is fine. But the connecting dots of characters interacting with the story and talking to other characters to push the story forward, that's the stuff that I didn't like and heavily detracted from my enjoyment and made me just want to skip everything basically. Um so yeah, like it sits on the downward slope of okay for me because of that. But like outside of that, I thought the combat was fine. I liked that there were like little optional missions that you could do that had different styles and vibes to them. Um, yeah, I will also say that even though a lot of the maps were um, in favor of the enemy faction, I can't recall a single map where the the terrain and obstacles were heavily in favor of the enemy faction. Those ones are annoying. Where like there's like one door checkpoint, and then they're surrounded by like a castle, and you can only go in through that one door checkpoint. But they got like five ballistas inside that you can't kill unless you go through the door, and you can't go through the door because they have golems, guarding and stuff like that. And it takes like 50 units to get through, and you're just, throwing units into the meat grinder. Like they didn't have any missions like that, which I'm very thankful for. Some of the missions were also like really, really tough as well. There was almost, I think, a 2.5 hour mission that I did the other day. Crazy. Yeah, I figured they were going for that style, Dante. Uh, I I like if you've played that style of game or that game in particular, I think it's very clear that this game is inspired by, at the very least, because they're still doing the same things. Speaking of that, actually, the commanders thing, I I I both like and dislike the commanders thing. Um, One of my problems with the commanders is that they're, what's the best way to put this? Like, the enemy commanders felt more difficult to kill than my commanders with regular units, I guess. And that could just be a strategy thing on my part. I've been putting them into danger more and stuff like that, but I don't know. The enemy commanders just, it felt like more effort needed to be put into them. Um, Now, having said all of that, I I'm kind of on the fence if I like the groove powers. They're like, some of them are really good and some of them are absolutely terrible. Like that one chick that the the summon beam or whatever. I feel that one is awful. Uh, you pay, I think, I want to say double the cost to summon one unit that can move immediately, granted, which is nice. But you know, the the scenarios where you would want to do that, I feel, are not as high. And then to have the money investment involved with it just means that you're you're paying more to move a unit forward, and while there's value to that, um it's just, it like, I don't know, it doesn't work for me. Is that one specifically doesn't work for me. um I will also say that I was kind of disappointed that there weren't, like, I go through this entire game and I'm collecting a band of people to help me save the world, basically. But not everybody participates. Like, all the commanders, they don't all participate in the same battles. So, like, sometimes you'll get one commander. Maybe sometimes you get two commanders, but it's not very common to get more than that. So, like, all the other commanders are just chilling, doing nothing or something like that. Um, it's I wish I had more commanders. I just wanted to feel more overpowered for a couple of missions. You know what I'm saying? That final mission, by the way, was probably one of the most obnoxious missions of this game. Like, it would have already been pretty challenging to just go through that mission with uh, uh, the small amount of commanders that you have, and you gotta figure out how to weave them in and out and whatnot. And you have to go through so many enemies. Uh, but then you have people getting mind controlled and stuff like that. It's not fun to work with, to deal with. And then you got these trebuchets just randomly around, and yeah, wasn't a fan of that final mission. But I think that's all I got for Wargroove One. You know, it was an okay game, and that's what I got. I guess that means I'm ending my thoughts here. Yeah.